Good afternoon, everyone. It's now 2:15 and this hearing session is open. My name's Roisin Barrett. I'm a Chartered Town Planner. I've been appointed by the Secretary of State to carry out an independent examination of the Winchester District Local Plan 2020 to 2040. This session is dealing with gypsy and traveller needs, supply and policies relating to that. There's nobody in the room who hasn't attended previously, is there? No, so that's just for the purposes of the recording, so that people know where they've landed. Okay, so gypsy and traveller accommodation. I asked some questions in my matters, issues and questions, and you've given responses. And indeed, at Reg 19 stage, we had a few comments on these policies, but not very many, did we? And that influenced my response to this issue, but not totally. So let's deal first of all, and I don't think we need to spend much time on this. Obviously, the introduction of an updated planning policy for travellers, sites. How has that influenced your approach? Has it been taken into consideration? And I think you've given me your response. You can just say what it was, Mr. Opie.
We've taken this is obviously a December 24 publication.
Yeah.
We've taken it that does apply to this local plan, unlike the MPPF. The key change, as we see it, in relation to the local plan, is to the definition of travellers. And it broadens that, yeah. And we just confirm in our response that when we've looked at traveller needs, we've looked at the totality of traveller needs, whether they meet the old definition, the new definition, or are undefined. So yeah. we don't think that affects the plan particularly.
No. And indeed, I've looked at both the original paper, for want of a better word, and the update, and it clearly sets that out. So I don't need to spend much more time on that. And in terms of the need, you calculate those, don't you? And the need, now that's set out. I'm going to refer to the plan here.
Table H4 on page 246 and policy H12 on the next page.
Sorry, in H5 I was looking at. Okay. So the need, oh yeah, sorry. So the need for the first category, which are gypsy and traveller pitches, is in the plan period, as you say, is 91 pitches, and then the travelling show persons plots is 35. Now, just an observation here, you're taking the plan period 2022 to 2040. We've already gone over lots of ground on plan period and housing need. Tell me, what's the justification for 2022?
That was based on the period that the original GTAA looked at. So that was published in
2016 one.
No, sorry. No. When I say original, I mean the 2022 GTAA for this local plan. In fact, that only looked until 2038 in the future. So what we do in the the traveller topic paper update. Sorry, it's not that day. I'm getting mixed up with housing here. What we do in the traveller topic paper is update those figures and project them forward to 2040. So we cover we cover the end of the current local plan period. But yes, in terms of working out the needs, obviously it's not like housing in that you get a new standard method figure every year.
Yeah.
This is a sort of one-off. That this is what the needs were at the time of the GTAA, which was 2022, and we then updated them in the traveller topic paper to basically a 2024 base date.
How did you project them forward?
What the GTAA does is looks at the needs in 5-year periods. By the time you get to the last 5-year period, it's just a projection of future needs. So we just extended that. I think, if I remember, it was only a 3-year period that they looked at, a 3 or 4 year period. So we just divided that by the number of years and multiplied it by what we need to extend it to. Okay. So it's just straight projection of their figures for the final period.
I understand. So if we look at table H4, those figures are the figures in the topic paper, aren't they, that have been calculated in line with what you're saying, and the need in the first 5-year period. If I can just refer you to paragraph 9.83, and it says the current needs takes into account unauthorised pitches with temporary planning permission, concealed and doubled households, and movement from bricks and mortar in the first 4 years. Can you just explain that to me? Because later on you speak about Carousel Park, Mitchell Dever and Fairgrove Lane area, North Borehunt. Can you just explain the impact, because that's quite a considerable change, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. In the GTAA, those two areas and the fact that they contained a lot of unauthorised development were a large part of the reason why the need for pitches was so much higher in the GTAA. And what's happened on those sites is that the Fairgrove Lane site was subject to enforcement action. That it was originally subject to an appeal which was dropped, so that enforcement notice has been enacted, and all the unauthorised uses there and unauthorised traveller uses have been removed, so there is no unauthorised traveller need there. And at Carousel Park there was similarly that started off as a travelling show person site. It was then occupied by a mixture of show people, gypsy travellers and general residential, and there was an enforcement appeal and decision on that, which basically authorised it for a mixture of show people and gypsies. So it is a mixed traveller site. It is authorised for that, and we are now able to enforce to remove anything that doesn't fall within that. So again, there is no unauthorised need at that area either.
I see. So I think I've got it. Please check. So what you're saying is that the enforcement against those two have got rid of the unauthorised need, plus have they provided more capacity?
Yes. Well, certainly the Carousel Park one did, because we were counting that only as for a relatively small number of show persons plots. It has now got consent for that, plus quite a large number of gypsy pitches.
Yeah.
I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but I think it was 24. So yes, that is a gain. So yeah, basically a big loss of unauthorised sites, which generated a need at the time of the GTAA and some new provision. There's still quite a high need in the first period, because that's where you pick up any doubling up and any remaining unauthorised pitches. Basically everyone who currently doesn't have an authorised site has a need in that first 5-year period. So that picks up everything that is in need at the moment. And then as you go forward, the figures tend to go down because it's projected needs of teenagers and then just general projections of need.
Yeah, because sorry, and just checking my understanding here. So you have taken the same approach to the national park, haven't you? You haven't included that in your calculations.
Sorry, I thought you meant we'd applied this approach to the national park. No, we've excluded the national park and just done it for our area.
In exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that paragraph 9.81, I understood it from the topic paper, and I wasn't sure if that was what you were saying in para 9.81. Okay, and most of the need is from the Romney gypsies, those with a long-term cultural link for travelling, from Romney gypsies and the small family sites. Can I just refer you to paragraph 9.90 when you talk about policy H12 applies to all ethnic travellers? What does that mean? Does it mean the same as
Yes, it's
those with a long-term cultural link to travelling?
yeah, it's basically the people covered by the definition that's now in the planning policy for traveller sites. So it's Roma travellers, gypsy travellers, travelling show people, and any category of traveller. It tends to be people call it people with an aversion to bricks and mortar. So it's people who want to live in caravans for cultural for cultural reasons, as opposed to park homes because they're cheaper or whatever.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, and then and then obviously that there's a need arising because you said they're mainly family sites. The need arising is one, unauthorised, and two, teenage children as families grow up. Isn't it? Yeah.
Really,
yeah.
There's a bit of doubling up and sort of overcrowding and so on, which picked up in that first 5 years.
Okay, so let's deal with that. So in terms of supply, what you say is that you can, it's in H5, isn't it? That you can meet the need over the plan period for gypsy and traveller pitches. You have taken into account the supply from the suggested allocations. I noticed that actually table 5 refers to H17. Have we got an H17? I didn't think we had. No. Just a typo there. It refers to H17. So what you're saying is that you can provide 128 over the plan period against a need of 91 for gypsy and traveller pitches. Travelling show persons need the need is 35 over the plan period, and you can provide 17. Okay, so let's park 5-year supply at the moment. So just explain the steps that you went through in terms of you've identified you've got an unmet need through the duty, etc.
So it was clear once we got the results of the GTAA in 2022 that there was going to be a huge requirement, and that was probably going to be difficult to meet. So from that stage onwards, when we had duty to cooperate meetings with our neighbours, we flagged that up. Obviously, we didn't necessarily know the exact scale of it at that time, but we started to flag it up there. We obviously refined what that shortfall or difficulty would be when we did the traveller topic paper, and we started to firm up these numbers. And I suppose at that stage we thought, well, for the whole plan period, we're all right in terms of supply for gypsy and travellers, but we've still got a problem for show people. If I show people, we had a problem in the traveller DPD. We've always had a problem with that, so that has always been flagged up as a duty to cooperate issue since the traveller DPD in 2017.
Is it 2017 or 2019? 2017,
19.
Is it?
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay, and in terms of you looking for sites, What reassurance can you give me there?
That's all set out in the
Topic.
topic paper in chapter 4, I think it is. We basically tried to think of every source of provision that we could, and then tested that. And I mean, the main source we've come up with was really looking in detail at all the traveller sites we know about, and with our colleagues from enforcement and development management, looking at trying to define what we knew about the needs of each family or each site, and then looking at, is there scope to either intensify within that site or expand it. And that's where a lot of the supply comes from. It's basically the first line of the table in H5 is coming from there. So it's not identified sites. You know, we don't necessarily know exactly which site is going to put in a planning application to meet their needs, but that is coming from within the sites identified or that we know about in the district, and which are all safeguarded in policy H13.
Yeah.
I mean, the other sorts of things we looked at is contacting all major landowners, the county council, looking at our own land. I mean, they're all listed in the topic paper. The only other ones we came up with in terms of sources of supply were the allocation at Timefield, which is.
Oh, I'll come on to them.
Yeah.
I'll come on to
and Windfall.
Now, okay, let's move on. So most of the need is going to be met or suggested to be met through intensification, isn't it? And your strategy is safeguarding, intensification of existing site, expansion or possibly new sites, and then you have two allocations or two suggested allocation in the latter two policies, haven't you? So that's your strategy to deal with it. I've lost my thread there. Okay, so but most of that need is being met through intensification. That's right to say, isn't it?
Yeah, intensification and expansion, which is that first column or first line of table H5.
Yeah, okay. And then we move on to Windfall. Sorry, can I just drill down in terms of intensification? How did you calculate that? You said that you.
It's basically by looking at each of the sites, basically does it appear that there's room to actually intensify within those sites from our knowledge of what's on there and the families that are on there and how much room there is. So we were able to see what's there, how big the site was.
Did you make those judgments on the basis of the circumstances of the site and the people who were there?
Yes, as far as we knew them, and we looked at the planning history to sort of get what the red line of the site was, what would count as intensification, or whether it would need to expand into adjoining land, which the family may or may not own. So because there's relatively few sites, we tend to sort of know a lot of them individually, and we can sort of make those judgments.
Yeah. Okay. And then we've also got Windfall, haven't we? So you've got, I mean, we're just dealing with gypsy and travellers at the moment. You've got 68, and then you've got 30 from Windfall. You've got the allocations, then you've got 30 from Windfall.
Again, that's explained in the topic paper, but basically what we did is looked at recent traveller provision, essentially since 2016, since the GTAA that we had then. Looked at the number of pitches and plots permitted and implemented, took off any that were on allocated sites, i.e. that weren't Windfall, and basically came up with an estimate of, or an average of 2 a year over the recent period, and projected that forward over.
Sorry, is that pitches? 2 pitches
Yeah,
per year.
pitches,
Yeah.
and just projected that over 15 years now. I suppose as with the housing land supply, we're sort of moving forward, and we're probably now down to 14 years of windfall.
Okay, I get that. And then moving on to, as I said, we'll park the allocations for the moment. Moving on to travelling show persons, you've got a need of 17. Windfall. You've got nothing for windfall.
No, I mean there've been very few consents for travelling show people. Almost all of those that have been on the allocated sites. The site that's allocated has permissions on part of it, and there are some plots that don't have permission yet. There's really only been one new site that's been permitted for show people, and that's in the that's since 2016. So it's so minimal that we haven't included any allowance for windfall. And our experience tends to be that it's much harder to actually find show people's sites, because they tend to have more difficult requirements. They're larger, they've got commercial equipment on there, they've got to have good access for their large lorries to transport equipment and so on. They tend to have more difficulty in finding sites, whereas gypsy travellers will tend to find a site. They'll usually find a site before they apply for planning permission, but they are much better at finding sites and bringing them forward, if you like.
Yeah. Okay, I understand that. And one thing, Basingstoke and Dean have made the point that many other authorities, I know many other authorities, look at their large sites and work to meet their need there. You've said that that's not possible. On what basis? You've got quite a few large sites coming forward.
Yes, I think the problem was, by the time we'd sort of updated and identified exactly what the need was, we obviously had a draft local plan. Well, I suppose the first thing is that those where they do that, it tends to be on very large sites, typically sites of 1,000 or more. Some of them have this sort of policy for large unallocated sites, where on a site of 500 or more, they may be looking for a couple of pitches, and then it goes sort of range sliding scale that goes up to 8 pitches on sites of 2,000. Obviously, the only site that's new that we've got of over 500 is Sir John Moore Barracks. That isn't actually in a location which travellers tend to want to look for sites in, but we did raise that with DIO and see if they were willing and able to provide for that, and we didn't get any joy from that approach. In terms of smaller sites, there are 1 or 2 authorities that go down to about 75 dwellings. So we looked at our sites of 75 or more, and basically, I think back to the topic paper, but we do go through each of those sites. There were 1 or 2 that had permission. There was one of them was Whiteley Green, which is now partly education and has got a drop below 75. And I think basically there were literally 1 or 2 sites that potentially could fall within that. But we felt that by the time we'd actually put that in as a requirement, that wouldn't be reasonable to introduce at a late stage, and we couldn't necessarily make it stick.
Sorry, what stage would you have been introducing them?
Well, by the time we knew these numbers, these really came at the Reg 19 stage. So the Reg 18, we were using the figures from the GTAA. Obviously, they were big figures. We knew there were big figures, but we hadn't really done that assessment of what were all the possibilities for supply. That was only done in the topic paper, which was 2024. So by that time, unless we went back to a Reg 18, we knew what sites we had, and we didn't feel it would be realistic to introduce those requirements. And obviously they would have been challenged. And in any event, those new sites are phased until after 2030. So it might provide for a long-term need, but it wouldn't necessarily provide for the short term, which is where the bigger needs are.
Okay, and the DIO is it? Yes, DIO weren't receptive to a small allocation on their side, but quite frankly, what's that got to do with it?
Well, I think we've got to be mindful of deliverability as well, because ultimately we've got to have a willing landowner. As Mr. Overcheck said, I think in terms of very large sites, it's possible, but also where and how the St John Moore Barracks site is, you'll see when you go on site. I don't think it's entirely suitable for that type of development. Obviously, we're already asking for self-build. We're already asking quite a lot of that development in terms of obviously playing pitches and obviously things like that. And I think you've got to be mindful of the deliverability issue, because otherwise, like I say, you're putting something in the policy that basically that they won't better meet. So we've got to approach landowners. We've got to approach them in terms of obviously, is their site deliverable? Are there any known constraints and things like that? And if they're coming back negative, they're coming back negative.
Okay, hear what you say. Thank you. Let's go back, if you don't mind, to 5-year supply, and what you're saying is, it's in the topic paper, isn't it? I seem to remember from memory you're meeting 75% of need in the first 2022 to 2026. Is that right? Something like that. And 50% of need for, it's right here. Yeah, 75% of need. No, it's the other way. Yeah.
The 5-year land supply, the latest one, is actually in the authority's monitoring report, which is ED 03A. And it's on pages 32 and 33 of that.
Yeah.
Unless you want to turn it up now, basically the calculation is we think we've got 3.2 years of.
Actually, I will turn that up because we've got time. It's 03A, isn't it? Yeah.
EDO 3A, yes. Yeah. On page 32 of that, you've got a table looking at what the 5-year periods are, and that's taken from the topic paper. And then you've got the calculation of supply. So you've got a requirement. Fortunately, the 5-year periods don't match with the ones that are in the topic paper. So we've had to take basically everything from 2020, all the need from 2022, and then add on part of the next 5-year period. But anyway, those come up with those needs of 60 and 25. There haven't been any completions. Any that there were are taken into account in the topic paper, so there haven't been any new ones. And then the supply again is taken from the topic paper, and as I say, even that supply is what we anticipate from intensification or expansion. So it's not really specific sites, but it is
not
sites
specific deliverable sites.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's sites that we know exist in the district and anticipate can be brought forward. And of course, if there wasn't a need, then they wouldn't need to be brought forward. So, you know, partly depends on whether travellers feel they have a need to bring an intensification or an expansion proposal forward, and then that adds up to the 3.2 years for gypsy travellers and 3 for show people.
Yeah, and what you say is, you've got 3.2 and 3, and therefore 11D is likely to be triggered. And yeah, what you say is that might help bring sites forward, basically.
So that is the intention of 11D. So yes.
Yeah. Okay, I understand all of that. Thank you for that. And then, as we said, you've got a number of policies. The first one, H2, is our criteria-based policy, which is aimed to meet that need, isn't it, and bring sites forward. And what it does, it sets out what the need is, and then sets out a number of criteria. Should be well related to the existing settlements, accessible, clearly defined, have regard to heritage assets, and then provide a whole range of things to provide acceptable living conditions, basically. So water and fowl, drainage, open space, vehicle access, etc., etc. Then you've got a catch-all at the end, have regard to all of other policies, which you don't have anywhere else in the plan, I noticed. Don't you? Policy proposals should be consistent with all other policies in the plan. And what you're suggesting is, a main modification in relation to heritage assets, because it divides significance and setting, and obviously setting contributes to significance. So I don't have any comment on that suggested MM. Is there any other MM? Sorry, in terms of those things that you would be looking at to provide acceptable living conditions, can I just refer to the third bullet under H12.5, bullet 3, safe vehicle access from the public highway makes sense, adequate provision for parking, turning, manoeuvring. Right, no vehicle over 3.5 tons should be stationed, parked or stored on site unless necessary for the use of a travelling show person site.
I think that and probably all of these criteria carried forward from the traveller DPD policies as policy there, TR7, which is the sort of catch-all criteria based policy, which in this plan we've combined in with the setting the pitch targets. So that 3.5 tonnes is carried forward from that. We found that's worked and is useful in terms of limiting large vehicles of gypsy sites, but obviously travelling show people need large vehicles to transport their equipment, so it exempts them from it. I mean, my colleague who deals with development management can sort of expand on that if you want to.
Have you found that to be effective?
Yeah, I think we have, haven't we?
Oh. Thank you. Just helpful. Well, while you're there, so that, and the other one that I had a query on is no commercial activities should take place on land, including storage and sorting of materials, etc. So
yeah, thank you, Mum. Yeah, we found both of those to be very enforceable in terms of DM when we manage and assess those, and that assists us with on-site. If there is sorting or larger vehicles, we can prevent that, and that helps with neighbour amenity issues.
how long have you had that policy? Is it in the extant plan?
Yes.
Yes,
It's in the extant plan.
TR7, yes, in the traveller DPD, yeah.
That's TR7. Is
It's
it?
TR7. There is a criteria-based policy in the local plan part 1 and the local plan part 2. So this is a sort of combination of bringing all the criteria together.
Okay. Okay, is there anything else that you want to bring to my attention on that policy? So that sets out how, in an ideal world, you would be meeting your need, and it provides criteria against which proposals can be judged. Okay, I understand that. And then we've done a lot of the groundwork on this, but then you've got policy H13, which is talking about safeguarding sites. So those are your existing sites. So first of all, should any come forward, you've got a policy on which they can be assessed. Then you're safeguarding existing sites. And you've suggested a main modification there. Sorry, I'll just turn that up. Can anyone help me with which one it is? I've got it. It's 44. Site reference numbers relate to sites included in the 2016 GTAA. Sites without a reference number have been permitted since publication of that document.
Try and explain what these numbers are. I mean, they are now included on the policies map. So that may be the more straightforward way of dealing with it, is to remove the site numbers. But it's just when the GTA is updated, they tend to refer to the same site number, so we know what site they're talking about. But not all new sites have yet got a number, so it's a bit of a difficult issue. That modification was just to try and explain it.
Okay.
I think if I can add from my knowledge, some of the sites, people call them different names as well. Just basically, we've had that discussion in the office of what's that site? Oh, it's this site, and somebody might know it under a slightly different name.
Thank you. Okay, and then you've got the two policies, H14 and H15, which deal with authorised traveller site intensification, and it's the usual criteria based on local traveller needs, lack of alternative provision, and taking into account the specific circumstances of the applicant, isn't it? And you use those criteria in each one. Tell me, for justification for intensification, well, and new or expanded sites, how would you anticipate local traveller needs based on local traveller needs? How would that be demonstrated? What would that look like? Yeah, well, it's on both of them. Yeah, it's
what applicants tend to do with that is give a history of how long they've been located in the area, talk about children going to local schools, using local facilities, and that sort of thing. So, I mean, obviously we can't and unless they want to restrict new traveller sites to local families, you know, the point of travelling is that they travel around the country. But at the same time, as H15 points out, it starts off with, we'll permit traveller sites within settlement boundaries. So they're treated as the same as other types of housing as a starting point. Obviously, as we all know, they're not likely to find a site within the settlement boundary. So we then deal with what happens if they're outside, and it's a sort of exception policy. You know, they need to have some justification for this type of housing development being outside the settlement boundaries.
So where does it say within settlement boundaries?
That's the start of H15. So proposals for new traveller sites, including expansion,
Okay,
will be permitted within boundaries. So the starting point is if you're inside a boundary, that's fine. Same with any other housing, that's fine in principle. And then the next paragraph goes on to sites outside the provision of H4. Sorry. Yes, H4. will only be permitted exceptionally. So this is exceptional circumstances
Yeah.
for a form of housing in the countryside. So we think that justifies a requirement to show some sort of local connection. And in practice, I mean, that has tended to be a relatively loose local connection. But as I say, it's things like children being at the local school, or having been in the area for a period of time, having family, friends, and so on in the area.
Okay, thank you for that. And then policy H14, the local planning authority will consider proposals for additional provision of pitches or plots to intensification within sites covered by H13. So that is just in relation to safeguarded sites, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, I understand that. Okay, did you want to say anything more on those?
No, only that the sort of the local connections, it is not particularly a requirement of H14. It's more for new sites which are going to be in the countryside rather than intensification of an existing site. But
Yes.
those are obviously the ones from which a lot of our supply is estimated to come from. So those are sort of key policies, really.
Yeah, or it does say the specific circumstances of the applicant, doesn't it? In relation to local traveller needs, lack of alternative provision and specific circumstances of the applicant, i.e. if there are children moving on.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it's not quite as demanding as the bullet point in H15.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Okay, do you wish to say anything more about that? Anyone? Okay, now let's turn, therefore, then you say you've got two suggested allocations. I was a little bit confused on these. So one, are they in an extant plan? They are, both of those are in an extant plan. Okay, so H16 is dealing with travelling show persons. So my understanding, I don't know, I've obviously picked it up. I've got a note here. They've been previously allocated, but not full. They don't have full consent on all plots. Is that the point? That's why they're allocated.
That's the case for the Shedfield one, the nurseries, H16, yes.
Okay, I understand. So that's the rationale for allocating it now, because it hadn't all been built out.
Yes, to give a presumption in favour of permitting the ones that haven't yet got permission. Yeah.
Okay, I understand. And then you put in the criteria. You put second bullet: avoid further expansion beyond the currently defined extent of the site. Is that necessary, bearing in mind that you've got an allocation and you've got a red line around it?
Well, what it's trying to say, that is a fairly well-defined site. It's got woodland to the south of it. It's got relatively open fields either side of it. So it's trying to ensure that development doesn't go outside the midline of that site.
Mm.
It doesn't mean, when it talks about the site, it doesn't mean the individual plots within it, but it's talking about the whole red line area.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose you could argue, well, if there was a proposal to go outside of that, it would be subject to H15.
Well,
which
yeah,
I suppose it would, but it's trying to discourage that.
okay, and of course, it would be unauthorised anyway, wouldn't it, if they were to go outside the site? This is an allocation, or of course.
Those criteria apply to a future planning application, then that they could put in a planning application that goes beyond that area.
Okay. Thank you. And then we've got H18 Timefield. Now this is a vacant. This is for gypsy and traveller pitches, and my understanding that what you're saying is it has capacity for 30. It's got planning permission for 20. Is that an extant permission?
It's in that it was implemented. It was for a long time a public site run by Hampshire County Council. It has permission for 20. That was implemented, although when it was last occupied, it only had 18, or was laid out for 18.
But what you're saying is that you're putting forward an allocation for 30 based on what?
It's based on basically the capacity of the site. I presume, Inspector, you'll go out and have a look at the site. Just a kind of word of warning, if I can, when you go out there. It has had some arson attacks on the site. There were some caravans on the site. It has been subject of some environmental health kind of fly tipping as well on the site. We have recently met up with the owners of the site. Basically,
Oh, so it's no longer Hampshire County Council?
it's no, Hampshire County Council sold it to basically Gypsum Traveller family. They disposed of all their Gypsum Traveller sites, similar to most county councils. So it was operated by county council. We've met up with the owners recently, probably about 3 weeks ago, and obviously we've been discussing with them submitting a pre-app for the site itself. But like I say, if you go out on site, just be conscious that obviously you can access the site freely, but obviously there is some caravans on the site that have unfortunately been recently attacked by arson. It's all laid out in terms of services, sewage facilities and things like that. It's got an access ride. There's a former bungalow on the site, which was the site owner's property, which unfortunately again has been vandalised. But like I say, we are very keen to bring that site forward because it is a suitable site for Gypsum travellers.
Absolutely, absolutely. And is there an appetite?
There is certainly an appetite from our meeting literally 3 weeks ago from the owner of the site to bring forward basically Gypsum Traveller site for it. It may or may not be in conjunction with and kind of other use, but like I say, they seem very keen to basically do something with the site, which is encouraging.
Okay, I'm not looking forward to that site visit. Do I have to go on site?
You don't. You can literally park nearby and look. You can look down the access road, but it's like I say,
And
you could see it's a big site. It's quite heavily wooded, etc. But it's like I say, I just thought I'd better point that out. That
Mr. John.
yes, yeah, I've got some photos of the site if that would be helpful. We took photos last time we were out.
I will
Yeah.
go and visit it. Don't worry, if necessary, I'll get somebody to accompany me, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Okay, is there anything else that you'd like to contribute?
Just on the Timefield side, I slightly misled you. It's not an allocation in the Traveller DPD. So it's a new allocation because we're increasing the size of it, although it is safeguarded site in Traveller DPD.
Sorry, could you just repeat? It's not in the DPD. It's not an extant allocation.
It's not an allocation. It's safeguarded site because it was in use or in partial use at that time, and we're now making it an allocation to increase its capacity.
So what would be, if both of these sites came forward, what would that mean in terms of meeting need?
That goes back to table
H5.
H4.
H4 or H5?
Lost.
So
Sorry, H5. Yeah, H5, sorry. So we've got supply from site allocations. So the 30 is of the Timefield, which is H17. Did we get?
sorry, that's where I said that.
Sorry, it should be H18, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
And H16 is the nurseries. So that, because actually those plots are all currently occupied, even though they don't all have permission, we've put a 0 against that in terms of zero gain over the number of people that are there at the moment. I suppose you could argue that you might get a gain of 3 plots for the 3 unauthorised ones that are there, but it won't accommodate any more people because it's already occupied.
Yeah, okay, I understand. Is that what your assessment is, that there are 3 unauthorised on the nurseries? This is the nurseries we're dealing with.
Yes. Trying to work out the best place to find that. Off the top of my head, I think it was 4 authorised and 3
I've got it here.
unauthorised.
It's paragraph 7.6 in the topic
right.
paper. Currently 3 authorised plots on the site, with the remainder being unauthorised.
Oh, right, the other way
Yeah,
around.
okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, yeah. But what you're saying is it's just going to accommodate the unauthorised, isn't it? So you probably
Those unauthorised are occupied, so it's not as though it's creating new.
no, I understand. Okay. Okay, is there anything else that you wish to say on that? Anything else that anyone wants to raise? Okay. Thank you for that. Mr. Fraser Urquhart, did you? Sorry, is it Fraser Urquhart or Mr. Urquhart?
Well, actually, it's neither. It's Mr. Fraser Urquhart. Well, actually,
Nicely put.
probably Scottishly it's Urquhart, but
Okay.
acceptable English pronunciation is Urquhart. So, can I just say, Mum, you perhaps don't know, we all know around this table that this will be Mr. Opusic's last contribution. He swans off into retirement when we finish this session, in which we wish him well. We think we'll be able to find 3 or 4 officers who can replace him, and we will miss him.
Yes, well, thank you very much for your contributions, Mr. Opusic, and enjoy your retirement. Lucky you.
We've got 1 or 2 little housekeeping matters
Yes.
to deal with when you're ready, Mark.
Yes.
Broadly on the sort of shopping list of things, we had a couple of additional, well, changes to the main mods really relating to St John Moore Barracks. Which one was that? What was Oh yes, that was the replacing 750 to 1,000 with about 900. And then St Peter's car park, which I think was really just to remove that statement about making use of its proximity to the town centre, because that just spoke for itself.
I've made notes
Yes.
on all of these,
Yes.
and what I would intend doing is doing a summary note to confirm them all. But those, I haven't got them in front of me, but that is the same St Peter's car park one.
That's right. Yes.
Was a
You'll remember there
upwards figure.
No, you'll remember there was that text about the requiring the proposal to take advantage of the site's close proximity,
Oh,
which we decided was effectively superfluous.
Yes.
So we were proposing just to remove that. I mean, we're more than happy just to reduce that into a short note for you. But if you have your own notes, then
That would be helpful, and then I can cross-reference.
very good.
That would be very helpful, because then I can cross-reference.
Good. Second item is Central Winchester regeneration. We were going to have a think about the relationship between the SPD and the master plan and what that was to mean.
You were going to put a
And
A
we're
note.
going to put a note. There's a slight logistical issue with that, in that the head of regeneration and development, who really needs to be involved in this discussion, he's actually on leave and not back until
Friday.
Friday. We've got a meeting set up then, so we would anticipate that the product of that will come to you within a day or two of that meeting.
Yeah, it would be most helpful to me if he comes back next Friday, doesn't
Yes.
he? Next Friday. So that brings us into the following week. Now I'm unavailable the following week. So if you could front load that to
Right.
the beginning of the week, I won't be picking that up. I think I don't think I'm available until late Thursday, Friday. So I'll be picking that up then.
Okay. Well, we will. Yeah. Okay. We will
So
note that.
can we say a bit of flexibility there, but
Yes.
earlier in the week?
Well,
rather
that would be
than-
our intention anyway. Yes.
Yeah.
On.
Sorry, what week is that? The week beginning the 12th, isn't it? Yes, because it's the 12th.
Yes.
And yes, it would be very helpful to me if you can summarize the MMs. I'll do the same, and then we can have a final list.
Yep. Station approach. We were going to provide you with as much detail as we could on what the current position was in terms of details about sites and capacities.
Yes, that capacity identified and the assumptions that underpin that.
Indeed, and we'll provide a note on that. I think we should be in a position to do that next week. As in,
Oh, okay. Oh, I've actually put it was the same. So that one will come.
that might come.
before.
Yeah, it might come early to give you a chance to look at it before
Okay, thank you.
before you become unavailable. The annotated plans for your visit to Bishop's Waltham and Colden Common. Those are the ones that was, yeah. Yeah, that will be Tuesday, we think. For
That's fine. I probably won't be visiting those next week, so don't worry too much.
Yes.
If you could provide them in the adjournment, that would be really helpful.
And then a couple of points which we've canvassed before on the programme of the inquiry, which still just give us a little concern. As you know, I'm not available on the 21st and 22nd of May. The 22nd of May doesn't matter, it's not a sitting day.
Hold on, let me just. Yeah, you did raise this.
Yeah, that's the 21st of May. We've got the 20th. We have one session planned, which is for the Homes for All policies. Now, I don't know whether, because my diagram shows a blank in the afternoon. Now, I don't know whether that actually means that you expect the morning session to overrun, or whether that is a genuine spare slot.
No, that was expecting it to overrun. Now I know I haven't delved in to the stage 2 hearing statements yet. If I know that there were a lot.
Yeah.
That there were fewer than we anticipated, weren't there?
Yeah.
So I can review that and see. But you suggested this before.
Well, we had various. The initial thought that I had, which.
Sorry, when's your unavailability?
Wednesday the 21st, Thursday the 22nd.
Right.
Now, so the 22nd doesn't matter because we're not sitting. I was initially I had suggested, as you recall, that we simply moved Wednesday's matters to the Monday, but for that's apparently is not something we can do.
No.
My next thought was to minimise the occasions when the council doesn't have the benefit of my assistance, such as it is, whether we could move one of the Wednesday matters to the Tuesday afternoon and possibly move the other Wednesday matter to Monday, the 2nd of June, or just that would be something that would have to be covered by others, one of those matters. I mean, I leave that with you as just a suggestion. I know you'll do what you can to accommodate if it's possible.
Right. It may well be possible to move one of those sessions to the afternoon of the 20th, mightn't it?
Yes.
If we just all work with a commitment to completing those sessions, and we'll have a look at the participants. That's people do have a right to be heard, and that's very important.
Yes.
Okay. So that leaves sustainable transport, active travel.
Yep.
I know we're likely to have participants on that, aren't we?
Yes.
So it gives the option, I suppose, of moving that. I mean, I'm not averse to that, moving that to the week beginning the 2nd of June.
Well, that would certainly be very much appreciated if we can do that.
Well, yes, that doesn't cause me a problem.
Right.
It's the 19th that causes a problem, or we
right.
Possibly I'd need to look, but the 2nd of June. Okay. Well, let's see if we can work something around with that.
Yes.
So it's the 21st and 22nd.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. I think that we would appreciate, simply because I suspect the council will want to instruct somebody to deal with anything that has to be dealt with on the 21st. And I imagine they'd want to do that sooner rather than later. Obviously, it would be greatly advantageous if they don't have to, because obviously I'm up to speed with the whole plan.
Okay, well look, if we say that we'll accommodate that, right. But it might be that it impacts on the week beginning the 3rd of June.
So be it.
And we need to have availability if necessary, the 3rd, 4th, and maybe it goes into the 5th, which wouldn't be. I'll need to check.
Yes.
I don't think. And what is the council able to confirm availability of the room? That's usually the thing that.
We'll obviously check, but I'm hoping that there's a free run, but we'll have to check.
Okay, well, if you can check at your end, I'll do something now. I won't be turning my mind to this until Tuesday. Okay, but to give everyone clarity, we'll try to.
Well, that would be wonderful.
Free the 21st.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate it. The last matter, just again on programme, you will recall that for matter 18, which is the 4th of June, one of our principal contributors is heavily pregnant, and we were going to do that session virtually. We are assuming that it'll just be that session which is virtual, and the others on that day will be in person in the normal way. Is that the correct assumption?
Yes, we didn't really bottom this out, did we? We spoke about it, and we didn't really bottom it out. It would be a bit strange to have the last session virtually.
It would,
I've done it before.
It would be a bit strange.
I've done it before, and how would that virtual session work? Would I be?
I think our preference would be if we could deal with the local plan viability virtual, and then basically in person we're happy to be virtually in the same room with you if that's helpful.
I don't think that. I don't know if you've ever done that. There's all sorts of interference when.
Oh, is it? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, when you have people in the same room.
This room, the room in here is actually set up for it. So.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, because this is where the planning committee is. So you can see them on the screen, but if that's helpful, I don't know.
So
okay, the other option is that we have this woman, coming in on the screen. Yeah. Let me think about it. Yeah. But logistically, we can deal with it. But we will finish with an in-person. And if we're going to change sessions around, it might be that we're sitting on the Thursday anyway, which will impact, because we won't do monitoring until the end. So that will probably impact the programme, won't it?
Yes, yes. And then the last point is one from me. I note you've provided an opportunity for council's closing comments. I'm assuming you're just expecting something brief there. You're not expecting a full-scale closing submission, are you? No, thank God for that. On both our points, I'm sure.
No, just the usual thing that council want to say.
Yes. We'll
Thank you all participants. It's been, very fruitful.
Very
That's
good.
that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, I'm just thinking about this virtual session. We could do, for example, the whole morning of June the 4th of the virtual session, and then come in the afternoon. I could do that. Let's get. Does that work for the council? Other
Yes,
participants. We do have other participants. I know HBF.
Yeah.
Want to contribute to that session?
No, we're quite happy. We're quite
Yeah,
used to
that might
we're quite
work.
happy to. We've quite used to virtual meetings. So
Yeah, that might work. Okay, I'll give some thought to that. I've got a lot to consider in the adjournment, and I'll obviously let the council confirm my thoughts once I've actually come to my conclusions. Anything else we need to pick up on?
I think so. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much. This session's now closed.